Hello, and thank you for joining the Aaron Warner podcast on iCode Media. Today I talked with Dr. B.N. Lee about an interesting question she posed on whether we use one or two spaces after a period. A lot of fun conversation, a lot of interesting insights from those who are on that discussion group that we share with you. So please enjoy the chat that we had. Also, we want to hear from you, so please join the conversation by leaving a comment, sharing the episode with a friend, and leaving a 5-star review. Also, be sure to support those who support us. This year, we proudly introduced the Life Meter to our practice in response to our staff's passionate demand for enhanced patient care. Their firsthand experience with the Life Meter underscored the crucial link between proper diet, carotenoid supplementation, and visual health and performance. Our front desk team now measures every patient's skin carotenoid levels, providing valuable education on each score and the significance of carotenoids in ocular performance and health. The result? Patients love the enhanced experience, and our MacuHealth sales have doubled since implementing Life Meter. To discover more, contact your MacuHealth representative or click on the link in the show notes. And I have been looking forward to this conversation ever since I invited you on, because you started a really cool conversation in one of the chat groups that we have within Vision Source that got me thinking, and I loved how you titled it, a time waster that really I don't think became a time waster. At least for me, it became a springboard to becoming more efficient. But before we dive into that, tell us about yourself. Where are you at? Where's your practice?
Yes, I am in Austin, Texas, and I've been practicing in Austin for over 10 years now. I'm a graduate from PCO, or Salus University now, and it's Texas is my home state. So
okay.
So I've been back since graduating from school.
Nice. Oh, well, Austin is where you're originally from, or?
No, I'm originally from Vietnam.
Okay.
And so but I grew up in Texas.
Nice. How long have you been in the U.S.?
So I have to do some mental math. So this is so it looks like it's about 30 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, you guys are hopefully you're surviving the heat that you're having down there.
Yeah, it's something.
So yeah, we're recording this at the end of July, and you guys are in the middle of a crazy heat wave. So
yeah.
Hopefully you're staying cool and enjoying it.
Thank you.
So what prompted this is you sent a note out to the discussion group and titled it "Time Waster." Curious random poll, and no, I love it because it immediately caught my attention, which I'm sure there's a marketing discussion to have there. You said when you type a sentence after a period, you put 2 spaces before the next sentence, and that's how you were taught in school, which I was as well. And you were born in 81. I was born in 80, so we're the same generation. And then you became aware that your younger staff only uses 1 space. And so you were curious about the 2 versus 1 spaces, and this started a whole chain of discussion. I had no idea that there was this much emotion behind 1 or 2 spaces. Did you have any idea?
No, I had no idea. This was quite an interesting chain of emails and replies that we have received, and it was very funny actually. And I guess this kind of aged us into the same group that I think one of the participant had mentioned that her nephew had mentioned, like nothing tells you that you're over 40 more than the 2 spaces versus the 1 space comment.
Yeah, that would hurt.
Yeah.
That comment hurt.
Yes. I literally chuckled, and when I read that, and I had no idea how much of a thing this is until I actually Googled this after she had mentioned that. So.
I this exact same boat, right? I didn't even think about it. I had to go type something to see if I was a 1 spacer or a 2 spacer, and which I'll get to in a minute because my finding was very interesting, and but yeah, I felt old, and I was because I was taught 2 spaces like you.
Yeah.
And then I was annoyed. I was mad that somebody would change what we were taught.
Yes.
And then I got mad at myself for being mad over silly spaces after a period.
after a period. Who would have thought, right? It
Ah,
makes such a big difference.
yeah, I went down a whole rabbit hole about how lazy these kids are now that they only have to do one space instead of two.
Yeah, yeah. It's been, since the conversation when I'm charting, when I'm typing, I'm actually physically changing my spaces now. And I have to go back and backspace. So I'll finish a sentence and then I go back and I was like, wait, I did the two space again. So let me edit that, and I have to do that continuously still.
That's funny. So I said I had to type out to see what I do, and what I found was interesting is that I hit the spacebar twice at the end of a sentence, but the AI, the whatever the magic genie in the bottle is on Microsoft Word or in my emails, automatically puts a period and then a single space. So in practice, I'm two spacing because I hit the spacebar twice, but in reality, my text only has one because it's. I guess they're trying to help the over 40 crowd not look over 40.
They're helping us out, Aaron.
And I need all the help I can get.
Yep.
Yeah. So it got me thinking, what are some of the things that I do that I hold on to, both in practice and clinic and business and in life, that really make no sense anymore? That I just hold on to because that's how I was taught, and darn it, that's how it's going to be. Are there any things that you've thought of is there anything that you do that maybe your younger staff or kids or whomever just look at you and go, God, why do you do that?
So my kids are a little on the younger side. They're
Okay.
2 and 6, so they would not be a good gauge. But that's a great
They're
question.
not correcting you yet.
They're not correcting me yet. Not today, right? Well, I'll ask them how they are.
Yeah.
In about a month from now, my 6-year-old will start doing that when he enters first grade. Um, but yeah, that's a great question. I am not sure. I can't think of anything on top of my head that my staff asked me. Why do I do that? I guess one of the thing in terms of communicating with staff, we have Weave as a chatting system
Mm-hmm.
in the office, and outside of the office, we'll text message and group text each other. I've noticed that my younger staff tend to be more informal, and use a lot more emojis, for example,
Mm-hmm.
than my older staff who tend to be a lot more formal with all the sentences structure and pretty much just a lot more. The formality is there quite a bit more and a lot more casual in the younger crowd. And emojis. They're big on emojis.
Big on emojis. Yeah. In fact, one of the responses came back and said that I'm hoping he was joking, but he said he's just going to start to try to communicate purely in emojis now. And on your thread, but I noticed that too. My kids are older; they're teenagers, and I would get so irritated that they wouldn't, when they text me, they would abbreviate words. They wouldn't use punctuation. There was no capitalization. There was no periods. It was just run-on sentences.
Yeah.
It weren't even sentences. They were just there were thoughts, and I used to correct their grammar and send it back to them. And my wife's a high school teacher, and she finally sat me down and said, "It's a losing battle. Get over it." um, but yeah, I found that too. That it's grammar didn't play a role, and even what we were taught as professionalisms hasn't played a role. I don't know how it is in Texas, but I very rarely do I call somebody Mr. or Mrs. whomever they are out in public. It's all first names.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very true. It's very
So,
true. Similarly in Texas.
yep. And we talked about communication styles. I've also noticed that nobody talks anymore. It's over text, and it
It's
drives
over
me
texting.
nuts. I don't mind texting quickly for brief communications, but I love a good phone call, and it's so hard to get people on the phone.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a very good observation that you've made there. Yeah, I don't think I've ever spoken except to my older staff. Actually, all my younger staff, I think I've never talked to them on the phone outside of the office ever.
That's crazy.
Ever, yeah, yeah. That is crazy to think about it. And we didn't have texting until I was. I didn't even get texting planned until I was in actually doing rotation in optometry
Really?
school. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that was probably the T9 texting where you had to hit the button 3 times for each letter,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And you get charged for every text that you send. There's a
Oh,
cap
I
on how
remember
many.
those. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
not unlimited. There's like a cap on how many you could send per month. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Oh, I'd forgotten about the cap. I remember the cell phones where so many minutes until a certain hour, and then you had
Hmm.
free. So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
waited until whatever 8 or 9 o'clock to make your calls.
yeah.
That's funny. So so texting and communicating and the professionalism there. Now, do
Hmm.
you think that's a bad change, a good change, or just a change?
I think it's a change that we all will have to, you know, go go with the flow kind of thing.
Hmm.
I think it's important that kids still know how to write well and grammar and all those, just because that's gonna carry with them for the rest of their life in their professional careers, in their job, and we can't talk in complete sentences all the time, but that's how it is though. So it's, again, I have, 2 and a 6-year-old, so I think it's harder for me to grasp on that. But when my staff were to do anything professional and they do that, I correct them and I have them go back. Actually, I won't correct them. I will tell them to go back and correct it themselves. Um, just because I think it's a learning point for them to do that.
No,
Um, Maybe that's a
absolutely.
parent thing.
Oh, I think it's a parent thing. If and my guess is if your staff's anything like mine, they just take it straight over to ChatGPT and have ChatGPT do it. Which if they're smart enough to have a resource, I guess they're smart enough to have a resource.
Yeah. Have you tried
And
ChatGPT?
oh, I have. It's exciting in
It's
a
crazy,
scary
right?
way.
It's super
Yeah.
scary. Yeah, it's very exciting. I test random things on there and I am impressed at what it could do. And it also, I think that's just a Pandora's box of different, things that we have to think about, but that's a whole different discussion. But it's amazing on what it could do. Very impressed.
It is, and I had a conversation with my 19-year-old. I was again berating his generation and how lazy they are, and I said you're losing skills. You don't know how to write in cursive. Typing out in grammar is tough.
Hmm.
And he looked at me and he said, "Well, how's plowing a field, Dad?" And I said, "What? I've never plowed a field." And he goes, "Oh, you're not upset that you have lost the skills, or you weren't taught the skills on how to plow a field?
Wow.
Must be nice to go to the grocery store." And so well, you got me there, kid.
Yeah.
I'm curious with all the things we lament, the two spaces or ChatGPT,
Hmm.
whatnot, if um, if we have to give up something to be able to embrace the new technology, embrace the progress, embrace whatever's new.
Yeah, I think it's depending on who you're asking and what generation, I think different generations will give you different answers. I think for me, so it's definitely hard to break certain habit. I mean, I'm still two spacing,
A
um,
two spacer,
as
two
we speak
spacer till
today.
I die. That's a T-shirt right there.
Yep, yep. So, as we speak, earlier I was just charting before I get on this phone call, and I was still doing that, and I'm still backspacing. So I think it takes a little bit of a time for us to break certain habit, um, to go with the new changes and whatnot. But I think new changes, it's exciting. It's exciting. We cannot improve. We cannot, be better if we cannot adapt and change. And I think this comes in, things like double spacing and ChatGPT to businesses, the business aspect of things. And so just constantly evolving, I think, is critical to our survival in many aspect.
Oh, for sure, because the world's going to evolve. So if we don't
Yeah.
evolve with it, then not
Yep.
survival as a species, but survival as a business.
Yeah, totally.
The So we talk about change a little bit. I'm curious because I don't think anybody's really hit on the holy grail of how to do this well. But how do you invite change into your practice? How do you get your team on board? What's the process that you use for successful change in your business?
I think having the right culture is one of the important part. For us, we do staff meeting. We used to do it every week. We've been doing it bi-weekly as of late. And it's just I have kids in summer camp and all of these things is just getting it gets a little tougher. So I've changed it to bi-weekly. But one of the things that I talked about when I hire any staff is one of the talking points that I literally notate on my note for me to talk about to the new staff is change. And that for them to welcome change, because I have found over the years, in terms of hiring different staff and different personalities, that some people are more adaptable than others. And I think if a person coming in unwilling to change, and already I could pick that up on interview in terms of just habits and whatnot, I think that's going to become a challenge. So one of my point for hiring people is the ability for them to adapt and to change and to embrace that. And I always tell them our office will gradually and eventually and always will change. And you could ask, ex staff that have been here for how long and how many changes we've had done on the simple listing as our procedure, on the simple listing as our routing slip, because everything will have to change. And so I try to instill that mentality when I hire them, because I want them to expect that. Because I find that just with experience, when I first opened as a private business and a private practice versus now that I've been in it for a few more years, that setting up expectation initially is I think is super important to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite quotes, and I wish I knew who said it, is that, but it's my mantra in life and in my practice, is you don't get what you expect, you get what you accept. And so I think it's very,
I love that.
very forward thinking of you to make sure that you're bringing on people that already have that mentality. Because if they're not thinking that way, it's going to be really hard for them to thrive in a model where you're not accepting the status quo.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's interesting. The one of the other things that I found interesting, I was talking with my wife, who's a high school teacher, and we brought up ChatGPT, and she said that they're going to start going to handwritten essays and tests in class to make sure that they show the kids, it's actually their work.
Yeah.
But I didn't think what the biggest problem was with this, and she said there's two main problems with this, and neither one of them crossed my mind. So I'll ask you, see if you're smarter than I am. So if you're going to go to high school kids and say, hey, you have to handwrite your an essay now or a paper now in class, what do you think the two biggest problems that she's foreseeing would be?
Just the fact that they will be doing their own work and spending time to do the research to do their own work.
To do their own work?
Yeah.
Yep. Then that's kind of where my mind went. She said problem number one is they don't have the stamina to handwrite because they haven't ever had to sit and handwrite for an entire class. And so
wow.
hand cramps, and
interesting.
they're used to typing. And I remember having to take notes and your hand getting sore and tired. But that was after a couple hours of taking notes. She's like, after 5 minutes. Their hand, because they don't do it. They don't write notes to each other. They text, right? They've got to stretch out their thumbs, I guess, when you're texting. But so hand stamina of writing, which didn't cross my mind, and certainly penmanship. She is terrified of having to read their penmanship because going along with hand stamina, they don't have to write.
They don't have to write. Yeah,
they don't have to be better. And I said, well, you got good practice reading bad penmanship because you're married to me.
But that's very true, even for us, right? I mean, I use a pen every day, but the extent of the pen writing is pretty much checking, circling things and putting check
Hmm.
mark on my routing slip, because I mean everything else is on the computer and on the laptop, in terms of writing, everyday writing. So, yeah, yeah, that is wow. That definitely did not cross my mind at all.
Nope.
Yeah, yeah, but
Yeah.
that's very true. We do the same. But I mean, we're not in school though, so
Well, and
so
I'm sure my
yeah,
hand would get tired if I needed to.
yeah.
Although I do like writing, so I recently grabbed a remarkable tablet to take notes on, and I enjoy handwritten notes more than typewritten notes. I think I retain the information better.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was
That's
an
interesting.
interesting thought that I just understand the cheating aspect of Chat GPT and online resources, but never thought of the challenge of being able to
So right.
sustain writing an
Yeah.
essay, letting alone reading it.
Yeah, wow. That really of course this tells you how long we've been out of school too, right? And even when we're in school, even in during optometry school, and you know what? Even when I go to continue education courses, I have back in the days I used to have a notebook that I will write my things in, my notes in. But yeah, I actually take it on my phone now,
Hmm.
and I don't even write it with a notebook.
Do you take notes on your phone when
Yeah,
when you're in class? Wow.
well now I do, but
Yeah.
not like for CE for continuing
Uh
education
huh.
courses. Yeah, yeah, I do. I do write on my phone now.
I haven't gotten there. You're younger than I am. You're staying younger than I am. I'll take notes on there if I have to, but
Yeah,
I look for pen and paper first.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. Wow, that's interesting. We're aging ourselves here, Aaron.
oh yeah, I've given up trying to stay young. I just want to stay healthy now, but staying young, the grays set in. In fact, I just got my first pair of progressives.
Oh wow. Well,
Yes,
that's a game changer too.
it was a game changer. I got the XRs; they were fantastic.
Okay,
But it
okay.
was I held out for as long as I could.
That's funny. You're gonna be talking to patients about how progressive is going to be and a lot more relatable now, and that you're going through that with your progressive. How is XR?
It was fantastic. It's my first pair, but I've grown up in the industry. I was edging lenses when I was 10 when I was working for my dad.
Oh
So
wow.
I've seen them all the way through. I've been an optician and dispensed them, put them on, tried them. But you could see the swim, or you could see the power shift,
Hmm.
but wearing them, no swim. And I got a 1.25 ad and a 150 ad on two different pairs of glasses just to see how the
Okay.
differences were. And I was very, very impressed, which is hard to do.
Okay. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I was happy with them, and my close group of doc friends that we've got the group text with all were happy too, and then it saddened me how that's the point of the conversation we've come to.
The highlights of our days, right?
The highlights of our day and being excited about a new progressive lens.
There you go.
So, um, so going back to the one or two spaces, the one of the other things that came up when we were talking about what we do is how we relate to, at least in business, how we relate to employees. Do I need to have the formal meetings as much? And do I need to have the old style of professionalism? And cell phones came up in that conversation. And I
Mm.
was talking with another friend of mine. So before I tell you what we do in the office, what's your cell phone policy with your staff?
In terms of them using their cell phone.
Yeah, and them using it, them having it on them during the day. What's your policy?
So I'm pretty relaxed with them. I do allow them to have the phone on themselves, but I ask that they put it out of sight. And so, like they will put in their pocket or, just out of sight. I do not want for them for if I were to walk out and I see them on the phone and there's a patient there that they needed help, that's just a big no-no.
Oh yeah.
So it has to be completely out of sight. Now I do have some staff who will frequently check their phone and literally take out their phone, check text messaging. And one instance I had, we had a staff meeting, and one staff took a selfie during the staff meeting to text to the friend. And I stopped and was like, "What are you doing?" And the person's, "Oh, I'm just taking a selfie." And they said, "Yeah, I'm just gonna send it to my friend." And I said, "Okay, you're just gonna have to put your phone away for the rest of the meeting, and please don't do that ever again."
Yeah.
So when it comes to using, I luckily haven't had any major issue to the point where it's disruptive, but I do require them to be out of sight. So, but I know that's not always the case. I had one staff previously that had the phone out all the time, and I actually had a talk about putting the phone away and not even on person, in pockets and whatnot. And this person got an Apple Watch.
Mm.
So, so they received messages and everything. So now they're on a watch instead of the phone. So I guess I find that if I'm too harsh, then or too strict, then it may be counterintuitive or counter. It doesn't work
Right.
as I intended to. So I just ask them to just kind of put it out of sight. And if I ask you more than twice, once, that's too many times.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's similar to what we do. We found it's easier for their well-being if they have it on them. And honestly, I've found it easier to get a hold of them half the time if I just
Hmm.
text them. And for the most part, they're pretty good. Even if I see them on it, it's looking at something really quick, and certainly if a patient comes, it goes back in the pocket, and they give the attention right away, which I think is fine. The selfie culture is a new one for me.
Hmm.
I cannot understand the need to photo document my life so the world can see it. Um,
Yeah.
but that comes with being old, and as my kids remind me. So it's the speaking of kids and kind of different perspectives. It's in being old and not sharing your life. I grew up in a era, and I'm sure you're similar, to where we didn't, we had a private life, and you wanted to have a private life, and you didn't want to have people in your life. Privacy was a big deal.
Hmm.
And it's gone a complete 180 in a sense that um, my kids don't care who has access to their world. Their friends on social media or people that they've never met. If somebody wants to be their friend, the answer is yes. And they follow people they don't know, and they're involved in people's lives they don't know. Um, and in some ways, I think that's scary. In other ways, it's interesting that Netflix tells me what I should watch based upon what I've done before. It's thinking ahead for me, and I appreciate that because it has some good recommendations.
Hmm.
And it's also a great way to mess with my kids when I jump on their profiles and watch, you know, baby TV shows and Blues Clues or whatnot, just to screw up their algorithm. But it's interesting to me that change and shift in philosophies on privacy
For sure.
versus at least my generation and what I think, and my younger staff.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's, yeah, for sure. Same thing. Same boat.
Yeah,
Exact same thing. Exact same thing. Yeah.
yeah. The
Yeah.
and have you noticed that with patients as well? I've I give 'em almost all my patients my cell phone number, and because I would rather them just reach out to me as opposed to trying to go through multiple channels if they've got a question, and I really can't think of anybody who's abused it. But
Do
I've
you
had a
do
lot
that for
more.
everybody or only certain special circumstances?
No, for everybody.
Oh, wow,
Um,
yeah.
it's it, it's to me the my phone's a tool. It's work, and I put do not disturb on at night. So if they call or text, it doesn't alert me till the morning unless they call or text a bunch of times back to back, and then it'll go through. In which case, it probably is an emergency. I found it's a good practice builder. I'll handwrite my phone on the back of my business card and let them know if they ever need anything. Honestly, most of them that call are super apologetic, and I wish they would have called the day before. It was
Okay.
I've got the red eye that I've been sitting on. It's not getting better. I got metal in my eye yesterday, and I didn't know what to do. But most of them are super respectful, and I would rather have them text me or call me than try to find me on social media and send a direct message through there. That I find weird.
Yeah. It's I guess a tangent from that. I've had patients that will friend request,
Yeah.
and it's I am not comfortable enough to do that. We have a business page that I think that if they want to be involved, they could like the page to look at the feed. But I personal account, I actually don't, even for staff. um, yeah, even for staff, I like to have my own space, and yeah, I'm just much more comfortable with those separations.
You and I are very similar there. Yep, I feel the same way, but I think that's a generational thing, and I don't
Yeah.
think patients are. I used to get, I don't want to say offended because I wasn't offended, but I was surprised that they would want to have that kind of interaction and relationship.
Hmm.
But I think I'm overthinking it way more than they are.
Yeah.
They see somebody they know and they say, friend or follow or whatever the page is.
Yeah.
Um, it's
Yeah.
in fact, I started a professional Instagram page to kind of promote the podcast and some of the professional things that I do, and remembering to put things up on there is a pain.
Yeah.
It doesn't come natural, and I have a little calendar reminder, to post something.
Yes, absolutely.
But my
I
personal page
understand that.
gets nothing. My professional that professional page is much more difficult and really not overly enjoyable to maintain.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And for the office, I actually have my younger staff manage these things for me because I do not enjoy doing all these posting. And that's just my personal preference as well. I feel very just very awkward, I guess, for just the simple post when I felt like the younger one is just almost second nature to them, just to do all these posting.
Yep, and I'm too busy doing double spaces to post.
There you go.
So, one other question I have talking about, progressive and seeing things change. When my grandpa was practicing, and then when Dad was practicing in his early years, the doc did as almost everything in the practice. They were the data collectors. They did all the testing. As far as I know, even on boards now, we're still testing young docs to make sure they know how to tell a patient to cover an eye and read a letter, or a series of letters, 20 feet. We've shifted to a much more of a delegation model, because I think my staff should be able to operate at the highest professional level that they can, and a lot of that is work that I used to do. Not that I'm trying to not work any harder. I think we're just trying to be more efficient.
More efficient, right?
But I've noticed it with some more tenured doctors and some of our more tenured colleagues. That's really hard for them to give up, and there's things that in their mind have always been doctor only. For example, I really don't fit soft contact lenses anymore. I have staff that are NCLE certified, fully capable of fitting, a toric, a multifocal, a spherical soft contact lens, and the technology is so good. There's not a whole lot for me to do, but when I've talked to groups, there's some that doesn't feel, they're not comfortable with it. What are your thoughts on moving forward and delegating technology and getting rid of the two spaces there and going to the one space where you're having staff do more work?
Yeah, I think it depending on the model of practice that you're in and that you want to work for. Currently, my office is a small private practice and just myself as a doctor.
Okay.
And so, in terms of volume, I myself still do all of these the soft contact lens is sclerofit, all the contact lens aspect, but my staff will do all the testing.
Okay.
Previous to this, I worked in a large ophthalmology practice that the volume is much, much more. Pretty much the only part that I do will be the slit lamp um, for the anterior and posterior seg, and that's about it. There are supportive staff in the contact lens part actually too, and there's supportive staff for everything else in terms of testing, refraction even. I would just double check the refraction, but that model was very different in working there. I think efficiency wise, I think I think if you're busy and if you have, I think depending on what you enjoy doing also. Um, just because, for example, I enjoy doing my scleral lenses patient, and I still do my soft lenses, but in a busier practice, I think efficiency is important. And if the staff is able to do it, I think delegation is the key. You can't do everything. You just can't.
Nope.
Yeah, you just can't. So delegating to the right person who have the right expertise and experience that could do what you needed to is important. But for me, right now, I am still doing that aspect of it, but I've been in different models that could do different things. But I don't think I would give up the refraction. In
No?
No,
Oh,
not
God, I
not
hate
yet.
refracting. I hate refracting. It drives me nuts.
I think we're so much better though. I have working I mean, the staff was very experienced, and depending on who the staff is, the refraction could be so off. And some staff who've there, I can tell you one ophthalmology practice that I worked at the time I was a student. This person has been refracting I mean, before I was in high school. And so this person is so experienced in refracting. I think there's quite a bit of an art to refraction that is learned over time. And this person is an amazing, he's a technician, but he
Hmm.
could refract like, on par to any optometrist. But I think he's one of the few, though, of the ones that I've worked with. Otherwise, unfortunately, some of the, yeah, we've had some trouble with other staff refracting it and not getting the correct numbers the patient need.
Oh yeah. Well, nobody's ever going to be perfect, and there's certainly going to be ones that are better than the other. I think the technology is so good now that if all the numbers make sense,
Hmm.
there's I can spend my time in more efficient ways
Yeah.
on working with the practice. But those are going to be some interesting conversations that we have going forward, and as much fun I'm sure as the one space or two after the period discussion. So. But I appreciate you posing that question to the group, and I certainly enjoyed reading all the responses. I didn't enjoy feeling old, but I'm very comfortable being who I am. So,
There you go.
yeah,
That's all we could do, right? We just gotta embrace the time.
exactly. Awesome. Well, Bian, thanks for making time and for jumping on and for continuing the conversation that you started
Yeah.
via email thread.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. It was very refreshing, and I think we have a lot of serious discussion with all the threats, and I literally was I felt like it was a time waster because it was like very intriguing when I talked to all my staff, and it boggled my mind that I was apparently the only one in the whole office double spacing. So um,
Well, maybe a time waster, but it put a smile, I think, on everybody's face. So, in that regard, it didn't waste any time at all, but was a nice little happy spot during
yeah,
our day. So, thank you.
thank you very much.